They told you a simple story: work hard, be patient, save a little every month. Eventually, you'll own something: a home, security, a future that belongs to you. That story is dead. Not because you failed, not because you didn't hustle enough, not because you bought coffee or took a vacation once. It died because the deal itself was rewritten, quietly, systematically, intentionally. You work more hours than your parents did. You're more educated than they were. You're more productive, tracked, optimized, measured down to the second. And yet you own less, not a little less, not temporarily less, structurally less. Housing used to be something workers bought. Now it's something investors harvest. Your paycheck used to be a bridge to ownership. Now it's a toll booth you never get past. Every month, money leaves your hands and flows upward to landlords, to banks, to asset holders who already own 5, 10, 50 times more than you ever will. You are not building equity. You are maintaining someone else's balance sheet. They call this the market. They call it supply and demand. They call it urban growth, globalization, financial sophistication. But strip away the polite language and it's simple. Your labor no longer buys assets. It only pays rent, not just housing rent, life rent, rent for healthcare, rent for education, rent for mobility, rent for dignity. You don't fall behind because you're lazy. You fall behind because the system no longer allows forward movement. This isn't an accident. Accidents get fixed. This has been normalized, defended, and exported across modern economies. A society where most people work forever and own nothing meaningful is easier to manage, easier to threaten, easier to control, easier to extract from. That's the world you woke up in. And if you still think this is about personal responsibility, this video is going to make you very uncomfortable. Here's the part they hope you never line up on the same screen. Productivity exploded, while wages stagnated and ownership collapsed. Those three things are not unrelated. They are synchronized. You produce more value per hour than any generation in history. Software multiplied output. Automation erased downtime. Metrics turned every second into data. Your grandparents clocked out. You are never off the clock. And what did you get in return? Not assets, not security. You got access. Access to rent, to subscriptions, to temporary permission to exist in the system. Wages stopped rising the moment assets became financial weapons. Housing stopped being shelter and became a yield instrument. Stocks became buyback machines. This wasn't bad math. It was excellent math. To them. Instead of sharing productivity gains, they locked them behind ownership walls. So now, even if your income rises, you still lose. Because prices don't rise randomly. They rise where you need to live. Rent, healthcare, education. Your effort increases linearly. Your costs grow exponentially. That gap isn't a mistake. It's the profit model. They tell you to upskill. But skills don't buy houses anymore. They rent you a slightly nicer cage. They tell you to be patient. Patience is a luxury for people whose assets compound while they sleep. You are blamed for losing a race that was mathematically unwinnable. So ask the forbidden question. Where did the value go? It didn't disappear. It was transferred, upward, locked in, protected by law, policy, and polite economics vocabulary. They used to tell you renting was temporary, a short stop before adulthood, a bridge to ownership. That bridge has been burned, by design. Modern economies didn't just tolerate permanent renters, they engineered them. Cities are full of people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s working full-time and sending half their income to property owners. That's not a transition phase, that's a destination. Rent used to be a byproduct of housing. Now housing is a byproduct of rent extraction. Banks don't ask, is this stable for families? They ask, how much debt can this body carry without collapsing? So the system converged on a perfect solution. You never arrive, you never finish paying, you never escape the meter. Ownership creates independence. Independence creates risk. Risk creates disobedience. A population that owns nothing cannot strike for long, cannot quit easily, cannot walk away. Miss one paycheck and your life destabilizes. That's not a housing market. That's leverage. And they expanded the model everywhere. Healthcare is rent, education is rent, software is rent, even your entertainment is rented, revoked the moment you stop paying. You don't own shelter. You lease stability. You don't build a future. You maintain access to the present. They call this flexibility. What it really means is you are always one invoice away from collapse. Permanent renters are not a failure of capitalism. They are its most refined product. Because when ownership disappears, people stop planning long term. They stop resisting. They just focus on making it to next month. And a society focused only on next month is extremely easy to control. When ownership became unreachable, they offered you something else: debt. They sold it as opportunity, as access, as empowerment. It was none of those things. Debt is not a substitute for ownership. It is the leash that makes ownership unnecessary for them. In the old system, debt helped you acquire assets. A mortgage led to a home. A loan led to a business. Time converted payments into equity. In the new system, debt helps you survive without ever arriving. Student loans don't lead to ownership. They lead to decades of wage capture. Credit cards don't smooth emergencies. They monetize instability. Auto loans don't represent mobility. They represent obligation dressed up as freedom. You borrow just enough to keep working, never enough to escape. Debt keeps you compliant. You can't quit when payments are due. You can't strike when interest compounds daily. You can't take risks when default means social death. They didn't remove ownership overnight. They hollowed it out, then filled the space with credit. So now you don't own the house, but you owe the bank. You don't own your education, but you owe the lender. You don't own your future income, but it's already been promised to someone else. Debt turns your future labor into collateral. You are not working for yourself. You are working for past borrowing that never turned into lasting assets. And here's the cruel symmetry. Asset owners borrow cheaply to buy more assets. Workers borrow expensively to cover basic life. Same word, opposite realities. For them, debt multiplies wealth. For you, debt freezes movement. This is why wages don't need to rise. Debt fills the gap. This is why housing doesn't need to be affordable. Mortgages stretch just far enough. This is why insecurity never ends. Because repayment has no finish line. They call this financial inclusion. What it really means is everyone is banked, tracked, and extractable. Ownership creates citizens. Debt creates dependence. And modern economies made their choice. This is where the story ends. A society where people work more, earn more, and produce more, yet own nothing meaningful, is not in transition. It has arrived. This is the final form, not a ladder system that needs adjustment. It's a rental civilization. You don't own land, you don't own time, you don't even own your risk. Everything you need to survive is monetized monthly and priced just below the point of open revolt. That is not incompetence. That is precision. They don't need you wealthy. Wealth creates leverage. They don't need you desperate. Desperation creates chaos. They need you permanently busy, permanently renting, permanently anxious. Just stable enough to work, just scared enough to comply, just hopeful enough to blame yourself. This is why reform talk goes nowhere. You can't fix a system whose logic depends on preventing ownership. You can't tweak interest rates or financial literacy your way out of asset denial. The system is doing exactly what it was redesigned to do: turn labor into cash flow, life into subscriptions, citizens into tenants. Not tenants of apartments, tenants of the economy itself. And here's the part they don't want you to say out loud. A population that owns nothing has nothing to defend, no land to protect, no future to inherit. No stake beyond next month's bill. That's not stability. That's managed exhaustion. History doesn't end with riots. It ends with resignation. People stop believing effort matters. They stop planning decades ahead, stop having children, stop imagining futures. They just survive. And when a society reaches that point, it doesn't collapse dramatically. It hollows out quietly. The lights stay on, the apps still work, the rent still clears. But ownership is gone. Mobility is gone. The promise is gone. So if you feel like you're working harder and getting nowhere, you're not confused. You're perceiving reality accurately. This isn't a coincidence. It's the outcome. And the only truly dangerous thing for this system is not anger. It's understanding.